Welcome back for another video, and this is one that I've been wanting to do for a very long time. And we're going to be pattern testing my 20 gauge Benelli M2. So I actually just posted a review on this gun, so if you're interested, go check that out. But I've got 3 different types of shells that were in my cabinet that I want to try, and I didn't really spend time going out and getting a bunch of different loads for this video. I'm working with what I got. And so first and foremost, number one, this is the 20 gauge shells I shot all the time last year. So I had 20 gauge 3-inch 1550 7/8 ounce number 2s. So ducks and geese, I was shooting them with this, and I feel like this is going to pattern really well. I've patterned the blue box Federals before with my 12 gauge, and they performed really well. I've got 2 others here. We've got herders, which were gifted to me by my father-in-law, and we've also got some heavy hammers. So I'm curious about all 3 of these shells and see which one's pattern the best. I'm guessing the Federal is going to do the best, followed by the heavy shot, followed by the herders. But I'll be surprised. You will too. We've got targets ready to go with 30-ish inch circles. They're not all the same. Kind of dealing with some smaller pieces of cardboard, so it's not going to be an exact measurement here, but we're just going to try and get an idea of number of pellets on target and go from there. But we're going to shoot at 20 yards and we're going to shoot at 40 yards. So let's go ahead and get to it and see what these do. So up first we have the Federal Speed Shock. We're going to shoot it at 20 here and then step it back and do 40. I'm going to show you guys the results of everything once we're done with this. So we'll count those up and see what things look like. But I'm curious. I've got the modified choke in here as well from the factory choke. So everything's going to be coming out of the same choke, just changing up the different shells and the distances to see how they do. So 20 yards, Federal Speed Shock. I love this gun. I love it. All right, let's go take a look. My hope is that my prediction is going to be true, and I'm kind of curious to see what kind of a pattern this throws as well. So I'm not going to go off of just one shot here and say, oh, it shoots high. We're going to kind of do a bunch of them, but it looks like we got all of our pellets in the target here. Nothing really seems to be outlying. Shot number 1. It's a little different patterning a 20 gauge versus a 12 gauge. There's a lot less pellets, so hopefully the counting goes a lot easier. So we will go ahead and put a new target up, step back to 40 and shoot that. I'm really curious about the 40-yard pattern. I've made some really long shots with this 20 gauge, and so I'm really curious to see what the pattern's like at 40. Sometimes you just get lucky. Other times your gun is on par. So over here at 40, we'll go ahead and give this one a pop. I just found my wad. It landed, it didn't make it 20 yards. So, I might have pulled the shot on that one. I really don't know, but it's not that great of a pattern if I'm being real honest here. Kind of shot high, but you gotta do a bunch of these tests to really get accurate results. I'm really just kind of throwing one up, shooting it at 20, shooting it at 40, seeing what we get, and just trying to base the results off the different shells. But the pattern, it's not great at 40. I'd say it's probably, you're getting lucky if you're shooting a duck at 40, but there's still pretty decent concentration here. Shooting a little high, it seems like. I've heard Benelli shoot high though, so I've shot really well with the 20 gauge, so I don't think it really affects me in the field, but on paper it definitely looks to be a little bit of an issue. So up next we got the heavy hammers. These heavy hammers are 1 ounce 3-inch number 3s. I think they're like 1350 feet per second, something like that. I'll have to look at the box here in a minute. But I noticed when I was shooting these, I wasn't liking them very much shooting them at geese. Maybe it's because they're number 3s, but I felt like the speed of the shot was really throwing me off and I was missing a lot. So we'll pattern this and see how it does, but from my personal experience in the field, I wasn't a huge fan of these. So 20 yards. It's always such a pain shooting at paper. Like, you're waiting for the recoil. You know it's not gonna hurt that bad, but you know it's coming. So sometimes you can pull your shot by doing that. Let's look at heavy hammer number 3s. It's obviously going to have more pellets, so I'm going to cut a shell open of each, count the number of pellets, and see what we have here. But first impressions, man, that pattern actually looks really good. That's a nice tight pattern at 20 yards. We'll have to see how it does at 40. My guess is it scatters pretty bad at 40. I think the 20 gauge is really good to 20 and 30 yards, and then after that, you're just kind of sending it on a prayer. I think something else we might figure out is that the 20 gauge will perform better with a smaller size shot. Maybe it's just the 2-shot might be just a little big for the 20 gauge, but I don't know. The heavy hammer is definitely looking pretty good. When it comes to patterning, I think it's all about personal preference on how you like your pattern. Do you like it to be super tight, or do you like to have a little spread? So it's all personal preference when it comes down to that. So 40 yards, heavy hammer. Yeah, that heavy hammer was 1350 feet per second. And then up next we got the Herders 20 gauge 2-shot 7/8 ounce 1550 or 1500, sorry. So different velocities in all these shells too. So there is 40 yards. I don't know if it compares better or worse to the Federal. Time for the Herders number 2s. Let's see if you guys can see the target. Not like it really matters, but it makes it look cool. All right, let's check that one out. And there's the Herders. All right, 40 yards. Oof. Yeah. Definitely an interesting test here. So we'll get things counted up and I'll give you guys kind of the final results here in a sec. All right, I got the numbers all tallied up, got the shells cut open. Check these out. Thought it was interesting. So the Speed Shock had these little purple deals in there. It's kind of like spacers or something. The BBs are all pretty well uniform. They all look the same, which is nice. Heavy hammer here, they got like flaxseed in there. Once again, really uniform BBs. They look good. I don't remember. What's it say? It's a blend of something here. So it's got steel and 15% is bismuth. I can't really tell. Maybe this one's bismuth, that one's bismuth, but overall, it's kind of hard to tell just by looking at them which ones are different. So can't really vouch for the accuracy of the 15% there. And here's the Herders. There was nothing else in that shell other than BBs. These ones have like the most imperfections in them. Like some of them, they're not perfectly round, things like that. These two, on the other hand, they had very uniform pellets. So I tallied up all the numbers. I'll be throwing all of the pictures I took up on the screen here of what these things looked like. The Federal at 20 yards had 114 pellets on target out of 114 in the shell. So that's 100% on target. The pattern looks pretty good. It's nice and spread out. It's not super tight, which I'm not a huge fan of super tight patterns because even at 20 yards, I've shot ducks a lot closer than that. So having a little bit of spread really helps me out with my shooting because, you know, I like to have a little bit of leeway for forgiveness if I kind of aim a little off to one side or the other. But it did kind of shoot high and to the right. It could have been me pulling my shot. It could be the gun. I'd just have to test that more to really figure that out. And then at 40 yards, it had 63 pellets on target out of 114, which is 55%. I'm not super happy with the pellet concentration at 40 yards. It doesn't look super great. I guarantee you could kill something at 40, but you're gonna have to hit them right in the head or hit them just right. You're not gonna have a high enough concentration of pellets to really stone them dead at 40 yards. So I'm thinking that's kind of interesting to learn by doing this about the kind of like the effective range of my 20 gauge. Now moving on to the heavy hammer at 20 yards, it had 142 pellets on target, and it was number 3s, so there's obviously going to be more pellets in that shell. So we had 142 out of 142. The pattern was super dense right in the very center and a little bit off to one side, but you know, it's hard to aim at just one little circle on the piece of paper. So the pattern density is great, and I think that's a really effective load in that gun. And then moving on to 40 with the heavy hammer, had 112 out of 142 pellets on target, and that's 79%. So still a really good percentage of shells or pellets inside that 30-inch circle. And even the pattern there, it looks really good. Now, I think the 3s are definitely more of a duck load than a goose load. I was shooting 2s at geese just fine. When I switched over to the 3s, it really kind of wasn't doing it for me, and we were shooting them pretty close. But as a duck load, that heavy hammer and that gun, from these two shots here, it looks like a really good load. The only thing I don't like about it is the velocity. It's slower than I like to shoot. So when you're switching from a faster velocity to a slower velocity, a lot of the times that can throw your shot off. Now looking at the herders, at 20 yards, it had 105 pellets on target out of 109. Now, I don't know what kind of variability there is between all the shells, so that could have been all of the pellets in that shell. Could have not been. I really don't know. I'd have to do a whole box to really figure that out. But the pattern density at 20 yards, it looks good. It looks like a really solid choice if you're shooting at 20 yards. But when you move out to 40, it's worse than the Federal was. It was absolute garbage. It had 76 out of 109 pellets on target. That's 69%. What was the Federal? Hold on. Federal at 40 yards was 55%. So the Federal did have more pellets on target. There's too many big gaps in the herder's pellets at 40 yards. So I would have to say, as for 20 yards with that 20 gauge, all of these shells would do great. They come in different price ranges. Like the Federal and the herders are a little cheaper. The heavy hammers, they are a little bit more pricey. So I think if you're shooting within 20 yards, any of these shells would do fine out of that gun. And once again, this is a modified choke, so even 40 yards is a bit pushing it with the constriction of that choke tube. So generally speaking, I really only like to take shots within 30 yards, and I always have a modified choke in my gun. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think of this. Let me know kind of your opinions. Have you shot these shells before? Let me know. I'm kind of curious. And if you guys have done a pattern test with these, what did you guys find with that? So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop me a like, and I'll catch you on the next one.